I used to think my life was perfect. 5 years married to Ben felt like a dream come true. But now, as I sit in our cozy kitchen, I can't help but notice the cracks in what I once believed was a flawless life. The ticking clock on the wall echoes my thoughts, reminding me of the routine that has taken over our days. Breakfast is always the same. Toast, coffee, and a quick kiss before Ben rushes off to work. "See you tonight, Clara," he calls out, his voice fading as he closes the door behind him. I wave, but inside, I feel a heaviness settling in my chest. The morning air feels stale, and my heart feels heavier with each passing second. I pour myself another cup of coffee, staring blankly out the window. How did we get here? Just then, the sound of a delivery truck pulling up outside jolts me from my thoughts. I glance outside and see Darren, the delivery man, unloading boxes. There's something about him that catches my attention. Maybe it's the way he smiles as he works, or the way he seems to bring a bit of brightness into the dull morning. I shake my head, trying to dismiss the flutter in my stomach. It's just a delivery, I remind myself. But as he approaches my door with a package, I feel a thrill that I haven't felt in ages. "Hey there, got a package for you," he says, grinning as he hands me the box. "Thanks, Darren," I reply, my voice a little too high-pitched. "You always come at the right moment." He chuckles, and I notice the warmth in his eyes. I guess I have a knack for it. "How's everything going?" I hesitate, caught off guard by his question. No one asks me that anymore. "Oh, just the usual," I say, trying to keep it light. But I can feel the weight of my words. "Yeah, the usual can get pretty boring, huh?" he replies, a knowing look on his face. I nod, suddenly aware of how true that is. It really can. It's easy to forget what excitement feels like. His eyes linger on mine, and for a moment, I feel a connection that sends my heart racing. It's strange and exhilarating. "You should find a way to shake things up," he suggests, his tone playful yet sincere. "Like what?" I ask, my curiosity piqued. "I don't know. Maybe try something new, like a hobby or a class, or even just take a different route when you go for a walk," he says, shrugging. "Yeah, maybe," I reply, but deep down, I know I need something more. As he takes a step back, I feel the moment slipping away. "Well, I should get going, but it was nice talking to you, Clara." "Nice talking to you too, Darren," I say, watching him walk away. I close the door and lean against it, my heart pounding in my chest. What just happened? Why did I feel so alive in that brief conversation? I can't remember the last time I felt this way, and it scares me. As I make my way back to the kitchen, I can't shake the feeling that I'm missing something in my life. Ben is a good man, but the spark we once had seems extinguished. I pour another cup of coffee, this time letting the steam rise around me, hoping it will somehow clear my mind. I glance out the window again, half expecting to see Darren still there, but he's gone. The emptiness of our home settles back in, and I realize I am alone in this perfect life I've built. How did I let it become so dull? As I stir my coffee, I can't help but wonder about the thrill of the unknown. What if I reached out? What if I let myself feel again? For the first time in years, I find myself questioning everything. As days turned into weeks, I found myself looking forward to Darren's deliveries more than I dared to admit. Each time I heard the sound of his truck pulling up, a flutter of excitement raced through me. It was as if my mundane life had suddenly been sprinkled with a bit of magic. "Hey, Clara, got another package for you," Darren would call, his smile bright enough to light up the dullest day. "Thanks, Darren. You always know how to make my day," I replied, trying to sound casual, but my heart raced every time he approached. Our exchanges grew longer and more personal. I started to share bits and pieces of my life with him, my voice barely above a whisper as I spoke about my marriage to Ben. "You know, sometimes I feel like I'm just going through the motions," I confessed one afternoon, leaning against the doorframe. Darren nodded, his expression serious. "I get that. My life can feel like a routine too. It's like you wake up, work, sleep, and repeat. Not much excitement in that." I felt a connection in his words, a shared understanding of the dullness that had crept into our lives. "Exactly. I love Ben, but I just feel so lonely sometimes," I admitted, feeling vulnerable, yet relieved to share my thoughts. "Loneliness can be a heavy burden," he replied softly, "but it's good to talk about it." As our conversations continued, I found myself laughing easily with him. His jokes were simple, yet effective, and the sound of my laughter surprised me. "You really have a way of making me smile, you know," I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Glad to hear that. Laughter is the best medicine," he responded, his eyes twinkling with mischief. But every laugh felt like a small betrayal to Ben. I loved him, but the spark in our marriage had dimmed. I couldn't remember the last time we had shared a laugh like that. The guilt weighed on me, but I couldn't help but feel alive in Darren's presence. "Do you ever think about what you really want?" Darren asked one day, his tone shifting to something more serious. I paused, searching for the right words. "I think about it a lot. I want to be happy, but I don't know how to get there," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe you should explore what that happiness looks like," he suggested, leaning in closer. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to push him away, to keep my life tidy and uncomplicated. But another part of me craved the connection we were building. "You make it sound so simple," I said, shaking my head. "It's not simple, but it's worth thinking about," he replied, his gaze steady and sincere. With every passing delivery, my heart danced between joy and guilt. I started to dread my evenings at home, filled with silence and routine. Ben would settle into his evening rituals, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing inside me. "Dinner's ready," he would call out, his voice cheerful. I would walk into the kitchen, forcing a smile, but inside, I felt so far away from him. "Thanks, honey. It looks great," I would say. But my mind drifted back to the lightness I felt with Darren. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, I found myself standing at the door when Darren arrived. "Hey, Clara, got a special delivery for you today," he said, holding out a small box. "What is it?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "Just a little something to brighten your day," he replied, a playful grin on his face. As I opened the box, I found a small plant inside, vibrant and green. "You brought me a plant?" I laughed, genuinely touched. "Figured you could use a little life in your home," he said, his eyes sparkling. In that moment, I felt a warmth spread through me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in so long. I couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, I was beginning to fall for Darren. The realization brought a fresh wave of confusion. What did this mean for my marriage? What did it mean for me? And just like that, I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions. I yearned for more of these moments with Darren, yet I felt the weight of my loyalty to Ben pressing down on me. I knew I had to confront my feelings soon, but the thought terrified me. The connection I felt with Darren was undeniable, but what would it mean for my life as I knew it? The moment Darren asked me to grab coffee, I felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with a deep fear. I stood there, staring at him, my heart racing. "Coffee?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "You mean, like a date?" His smile was warm, and it made my stomach flutter. "Just two friends hanging out, Clara. Nothing serious," he said, but I knew better. This was serious. This was the first step toward something I had never dared to imagine. As I walked away from that brief encounter, my mind spun with possibilities. I glanced back at Darren, who was already heading to his next delivery. I could feel the weight of my conscience pressing down on me. What would Ben say? What would I even say if I accepted? I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts. I had to think about this. That night, I lay in bed beside Ben, the darkness around us heavy with silence. He was fast asleep, his breathing steady and calm. I turned to face him, studying his features in the dim light. He looked so peaceful. But I felt a storm brewing inside me. "What am I doing?" I whispered to myself. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling of anticipation and dread. I accepted Darren's invitation. I needed to see him, to feel that spark again. We agreed to meet at a cozy little cafe downtown, a place I had never noticed before. When I arrived, my heart raced as I pushed open the door. The warm air wrapped around me like a hug, and the rich smell of coffee filled my senses. I spotted Darren sitting at a small table in the corner, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. "Hey, you made it," he said, his grin infectious. "Of course," I replied, trying to sound casual. But inside, I was a whirlwind of nerves. I wouldn't miss it. We sat across from each other, the small table barely big enough for our coffees and a plate of pastries. As we sipped our drinks, I felt a sense of ease wash over me. "So, how has your week been?" I asked, genuinely interested. Darren leaned back in his chair, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Oh, just the usual. Delivering packages, dodging dogs, and trying to figure out if I should start a band." "A band? Seriously?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Why not?" He shrugged. "Life's too short to play it safe all the time." His words struck a chord deep within me. I realized how much I missed that kind of thinking in my own life. "I guess you're right," I said, my voice quieter. "I've been playing it safe for too long." His expression turned serious. "What do you really want, Clara? I mean, outside of the routine and the expected?" That question hung in the air between us, heavy and loaded. I took a breath, feeling vulnerable. "I want to feel alive again," I confessed. "I've lost that part of myself. I thought marriage would bring me happiness. But now..." Darren leaned forward, his eyes locked onto mine. "But now you feel trapped?" I nodded, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "It's like I'm living someone else's life. I don't know how it happened, but I'm here, and I feel so lonely." He reached across the table, placing his hand over mine. "You're not alone, Clara. You're here with me, and I see you." His touch sent a shiver down my spine. I felt seen, understood in a way I hadn't experienced in years. The laughter and stories flowed easily, but with each passing moment, the weight of my choices grew heavier. I could feel myself falling for him, and it scared me to my core. As we wrapped up our coffee, I realized how important this moment was. It marked a turning point in my life, a moment where I had to confront my feelings. I looked into Darren's eyes, and for the first time, I felt like I could choose my own happiness. But the thought of Ben lingered in my mind, a shadow I couldn't shake off. I left the cafe with a mix of exhilaration and dread, knowing I would have to face the truth of my heart sooner rather than later. The thrill of this connection was intoxicating, yet it came with a price I was not sure I was ready to pay. Every time I met Darren, I felt joy bubbling inside me, like a child on a swing. But as soon as I returned home to Ben, that happiness would slip away, replaced by a heavy sadness. Ben would greet me with a smile, completely unaware of the storm brewing in my heart. I would sit across from him at dinner, forcing myself to laugh at his jokes, while my mind wandered to the warmth of Darren's gaze. One evening, as we finished dinner, Ben leaned back in his chair, looking relaxed and content. "I've been thinking, Clara," he said, his eyes sparkling. "How about we take a weekend trip, just the two of us, somewhere nice?" My stomach dropped. A romantic getaway? I forced a smile, but inside, I felt like I was on a roller coaster, racing between thrill and dread. "That sounds great, Ben," I replied, my voice shaky. "Where did you have in mind? Maybe the lake house? We haven't been there in ages," he suggested, his excitement palpable. I nodded, but my heart sank. The lake house was a place filled with memories of laughter, love, and a time when I felt truly happy. But how could I enjoy it now, knowing that my heart was with someone else? I needed to be honest with myself. As he talked about the trip, I felt torn. On one side was Ben, the reliable partner who had always been there for me. On the other was Darren, who made me feel alive again. Later that night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced with thoughts of Darren. Each moment we shared played like a movie in my head. The way he laughed, the kindness in his eyes, the way he listened as if I was the only person in the world. But then there was Ben, who loved me deeply, and I couldn't help but feel the weight of my secret crushing me. "Clara, are you awake?" Ben's voice broke through my thoughts. I turned to him, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'm here, just thinking." "About what?" he asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. I hesitated, my heart pounding. Could I tell him the truth? "Just about us," I finally said, hoping it would satisfy his curiosity. "Us? Is everything okay?" he asked, concern creeping into his tone. "Of course. Just thinking about our trip," I replied quickly, not wanting to dive into the mess of my feelings. But the truth was, everything was not okay. As days passed, the duality of my emotions became unbearable. I felt moments of pure joy when I was with Darren, and then waves of sorrow crashed over me when I returned to my empty home. Each time Darren delivered a package, I felt a rush of excitement. We would share stories and laugh, but I always left with a gnawing guilt. I was betraying Ben, and yet I craved the connection I had with Darren. One afternoon, as we sat in a small cafe, I looked into Darren's eyes. "I don't know how to handle this," I admitted, my voice trembling. "What do you mean?" he asked, leaning closer. "I love talking to you, but I'm married," I said, feeling tears welling up. "I shouldn't feel this way." Darren sighed, his brows furrowing. "Clara, it's okay to feel confused. Emotions are complicated. You deserve to be happy." "But at what cost?" I questioned, my heart aching. "Ben loves me. He has no idea what's happening." Darren reached out and took my hand, his touch sending a shiver down my spine. "You need to figure out what you want. Do you want to stay in a safe but unfulfilling life? Or do you want to explore what makes you truly happy?" His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I felt the truth of them sink in, but the fear of making a choice paralyzed me. How could I choose between comfort and passion, between the life I had built and the one I longed for? That night, as I lay in bed beside Ben, I felt more lost than ever. The weight of my secret pressed down on me, and I realized I could not carry it forever. I had to confront my feelings, no matter how painful it would be. It was time to face the duality of my emotions head-on. I woke up that morning with a heavy heart. The sun streamed through the curtains, but the light felt dim compared to the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I knew today would be different. I had made up my mind to meet Darren one last time. I needed to face my feelings and the reality of my situation. As I got ready, my hands trembled slightly. What would I say? Would I be brave enough to confess everything? I glanced at my reflection in the mirror, The woman looking back at me was full of confusion and longing. I whispered to myself, "You can do this, Clara." When the time came, I arrived at the little cafe where we always met. The familiar smell of coffee wrapped around me like a warm hug, yet it did little to calm my nerves. I spotted Darren sitting at our usual table, his hazel eyes lighting up when he saw me. "Hey, Clara," he said, standing to pull out my chair. "You look beautiful today." "Thanks," I replied, trying to hide my anxiety behind a smile. "I needed to talk to you." As we settled into our seats, I could feel the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. "Darren, I've been thinking a lot about us and my life," I began, my voice trembling slightly. He leaned in closer, his expression serious. "What's on your mind?" Taking a deep breath, I decided to lay it all bare. "I feel lost. My marriage with Ben, it feels empty. I care about him, but I don't feel alive anymore." Darren nodded, his gaze steady. "I understand. I've seen the way you light up when we talk. It's like you find a piece of yourself again." "I do," I admitted, my heart racing. "But I'm scared. Scared of hurting Ben, and scared of what this all means for me." "Clara, you deserve to be happy," he said gently. "But you have to decide what happiness truly means for you. It's not easy, but facing it is the first step." His words struck a chord within me. I had spent so long avoiding the truth, but now it was staring me right in the face. What if I choose wrong? What if I regret leaving Ben? Darren reached across the table, his hand brushing against mine. "You won't know unless you try. Think about what makes you feel alive, what brings you joy. You owe it to yourself to find that." I looked down at our hands, the warmth of his touch igniting a flicker of hope within me. "I just don't know if I can handle the consequences," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if it's worse to stay in a life that doesn't fulfill you?" he asked, his tone firm yet compassionate. "You have to think about what you want, not just what's safe." Those words echoed in my mind. I realized how much I had been living for others and not for myself. I needed to be honest, not just with Darren, but with Ben too. "I think I need to tell Ben how I feel," I said, the decision forming in my heart. "I need to confront him about our marriage. It's time to stop hiding." Darren's eyes softened, and he smiled encouragingly. "That's a brave step, Clara. No matter what happens, you're taking control of your life." We finished our coffee, but the conversation lingered in the air like the rich aroma of the brew. I felt lighter, as if I had peeled away a layer of doubt and fear. As I stood to leave, Darren grabbed my hand again, holding it tightly. "Just remember, whatever you decide, I'm here for you." "Thank you, Darren, for everything," I replied, feeling a mix of gratitude and sadness. I knew this was our last meeting in this way, and it made my heart ache. Walking away from the cafe, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in a long time. I had a difficult road ahead, but it was my path to walk. I was ready to confront my life and the choices that would shape my future. As I lay in bed that night, the weight of my thoughts pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. The room was dark, but I could still see Darren's smile in my mind. It was a smile that made me feel seen, understood, and alive. I turned to face the wall, trying to block out the sound of Ben's steady breathing beside me. He looked peaceful, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I thought back to our last conversation. "What does happiness really mean to you, Clara?" Darren had asked, his eyes searching mine. I had no answer then, but I knew I needed to find one. I couldn't keep living in this fog of confusion. I had to confront my feelings, not just for Darren, but for Ben too. The morning light crept into the room, and I felt a sense of urgency. I needed to talk to Ben. I needed to face the truth about our marriage. I got out of bed, my heart racing as I made my way to the kitchen. I found Ben sitting at the table, reading the newspaper. He looked up and smiled, a warm smile that made my chest tighten. "Good morning, Clara. Sleep well?" he asked, folding the paper and setting it aside. I swallowed hard. "Can we talk?" My voice was shaky, but I pushed through the fear. I needed to say this. "Of course. Is everything okay?" His brow furrowed with concern. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "No, Ben. Everything is not okay. I've been feeling lost for a while now, and I can't hide it anymore." He looked taken aback, his expression shifting from concern to confusion. "What do you mean? Is it work? Is it something I did?" I shook my head, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "It's not about you. It's about us. I've been thinking a lot about our marriage and what I really want." Ben's face paled. "What are you saying, Clara?" "I'm saying that I've been unhappy," I admitted, my voice breaking. "I've felt alone for a long time, and then I met someone who made me feel alive again." His eyes widened, and I could see the hurt flash across his face. "Who? Is it someone at work?" I hesitated, not wanting to hurt him more than I already had. "It's Darren, the delivery man. We've talked a lot, and he understands me in a way that I didn't think was possible." Ben's expression hardened. "So you're saying you're falling for someone else? Is that it?" I felt a wave of guilt wash over me, but I pressed on. "I don't want to hurt you, Ben, but I can't pretend anymore. I need to be honest about my feelings. I care about you, but I feel like we've lost something important. I want to know if there's a way to fix this." For a moment, silence filled the room. Ben looked down, his hands clenched into fists. "I had no idea you felt this way. I thought we were happy." I reached across the table, wanting to comfort him. "I thought so too, but we've fallen into this routine. I don't want to just go through the motions anymore. I want to feel connected, to feel alive." He looked up, tears glistening in his eyes. "What do you want from me, Clara? Are you saying you want to leave?" I took a deep breath, the reality of my words weighing heavily on me. "I don't know. I need to figure out what I truly want. I need time to think." Ben nodded slowly, his expression a mix of hurt and resignation. "I wish you would have told me sooner. I would have tried to change things." "I know, and I'm sorry," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I just didn't know how to say it. As we sat in silence, I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. The conversation had opened a floodgate of emotions, and I knew that this was just the beginning. I had to decide whether to pursue the thrill I felt with Darren, or to fight for the love that had once flourished with Ben. In that moment, I realized the decision was mine alone to make. I needed to consider what happiness truly meant for me, and I was determined to find the answer, no matter how painful the journey might be. Share this story if you believe that the quest for happiness can lead us to unexpected crossroads. Leave your comment about a moment when you had to confront your feelings and make a tough choice. Don't forget to subscribe for more captivating stories like this one.